Hello there, and welcome back to Roll Again. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, um, Dungeons and Dragons' newest book. There's some real positives and there's some negatives to this, just like any book. But there's plenty of videos out there, to be honest, kind of going through the book and giving an overview. So I'm not going to do that in this short video. Really, what I want to talk about is the top three things I enjoyed about Van Richten's that I think really made it a great book. And then also I'll talk about a few of the things that I thought could have been done better and for future books. The purpose behind this really is because I'm starting as a DM new campaign with a group of players that I've been playing with for over a year now. And it's a horror-based campaign that they're really excited about starting. It's called Haunted Heroes, but it's based off of a lot of things that come from Van Richten's. I am not someone who usually runs campaigns straight out of books. I love to homebrew my own campaign, but I do pull a lot of ideas from the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition books. And so Van Richten's has given me a lot of starting points to utilize my own homebrew campaign. And so we're going to talk about some of those today. And then there's a follow-up video that I'm going to have as well, talking about specifically the setting that my homebrew campaign is going to take place. And next week, you guys will be able to see the session 0 character design sessions where I connect with each one of my players and they get to talk a little bit about the character that they're bringing into the session, as well as rolling for their ability scores and their hit points. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the attributes and things that their character is going to have. So that's pretty exciting. And I'm going to do that with each of the 4 characters that's going to be in the new campaign. So as we get started, before that, let's talk about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I really did enjoy the book quite a bit. I've got a lot of ideas that I've pulled from it. The top 3 things that I really liked about Van Richten's, the first is the lineage piece. I thought this was a great addition. I know that some of this had been homebrewed before or in the UA sections, but I really like the fact that they had the 3 lineages that they focused on: the Reborn, the Hex Blood, and the Dampier. I know 2 of those specifically are going to be used in my homebrew campaign. One character is going to be a Reborn, which I think is a great lineage to add to pretty much any race. The Reborn, I think the great thing about the Reborn piece is that someone who died and was brought back in a number of ways that you can really do that, but also there's like haunted past that connects to that. So they don't have memories from before they died, but sometimes you can access those memories. And there's a few skills where I think a set number of times per short or long rest, you can actually access those memories. So when you roll for a skill, you can actually add on an additional roll to help boost that piece. And so that's really a great thing that I think is added in the Reborn section. I think it's technically called Knowledge from the Past Life. You temporarily remember glimpses of the past, perhaps faded memories from ages ago or previous. So you, when you make an ability check that uses a skill, you can roll a d6 immediately after the d20 roll and add that to the check. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So that's a great aspect of the Reborn piece. And Van Richten's does a great job of giving some origins for Reborn and lost memories. They have tables that you can roll. I think those are helpful too. I don't usually use them as much. Sometimes I'll forward them on to my players if they're having trouble creating a character. But the players I'm playing with have been playing for, like I said, they just finished an arc in my campaign that's lasted a year. They pretty much know where they want to be with this new character. A lot of them have been thinking about it for quite some time, so they've already come up with origins, backstories, things like that. But it is some great starting material that they do give you here in the Reborn piece. They also give you some domains of dread that might link with the Reborn lineage, and I think that's helpful as well. The Hex Blood also is pretty cool. Basically, without getting too crazy into it, the point behind a Hex Blood really is that it's someone who has gained their powers from a hag, They've made some kind of connection or deal with a hag, and because of that, some of the hags features have now pronounced themselves on the player. So your skin might be a number of shades of colors that might match a hag: purple, green, blue. Those are some of the illustrations. Also, you have a crown that kind of naturally forms itself almost like out of horn around your head, which shows that you're Hex Blood as well, and that allows you kind of magic. It's a little bit like a Hex Warlock, but it's an interesting twist to add into the horror domain, especially if you want to bring in hags as adversaries. I think that's a great piece as well. And I think the Hex Blood also has an aspect where they can become a hag. So that's pretty cool too. And then the third lineage that really jumped out at me was the Pier. I think it's great as a player character position, especially for a horror piece, just like we're going to be doing in a setting that I'm going to be running. And so obviously when we think of that, we normally think of vampires who are fighting that urge or that hunger. But again, there's some roll tables in Van Richten's that doesn't mean that you're going to be necessarily a traditional or conventional vampire. You might be hungering for blood, but you could also be hungering for flesh or spinal fluid or psychic energy or dreams or life energy. So there's a lot of ways to play that, which is kind of cool. Of course, I think the player character that is going to be in my setting wants to really stick with that traditional take of a vampire and blood hunger. They give you some origin options for a table as well. And the Pier brings a number of really cool traits. You're humanoid still, but there's a few things like, obviously you have dark vision, so it doesn't matter what race you were initially before you were turned into a Pier, because you can keep those traits as well, but you gain dark vision if you didn't have it before. You have a deathless nature, which means you don't need to breathe, which is kind of cool. We don't think about it as much in everyday settings and sessions, but if you're in an underwater situation or there's gas or you're locked into something or buried, you don't have to worry about breathing, which is kind of neat. You also get spider climb, which is going to be a natural ability. So at third level, you can move up, down, and across vertical spaces and upside down, but you can do it hands-free, just like you're walking. So that's pretty cool. And can be utilized, I imagine, in a lot of different ways, but that's really a neat piece as well. And you also have vampiric bite. So you can attack a creature by biting them. And you can regain hit points equal to the piercing damage that your bite does, which I believe it's a 1d4 piercing damage on a hit, but you can gain that many hit points back. Kind of like you're sucking their blood and it's adding to you, which is kind of cool. Or you can gain a bonus to the next ability check or attack roll that you make. And you can do that as a choice. So if you're biting someone but you have full hit points, it doesn't take away that ability. Instead, you can decide to give yourself a bonus to your next ability check or your next attack roll. And the bonus equals the piercing damage dealt by the bite. So instead of taking that many hit points, you can use that as a bonus to your next skill check or attack roll, which is kind of cool. Again, I think there's some really cool traits that have kind of been added to the Pier piece. There's two characters specifically in my upcoming session of Haunted Heroes, the campaign, that are going to utilize both the Reborn and the Pier lineage, as far as connecting it onto an existing race, which should be pretty cool. The next thing, I guess the number 2 piece from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft that I really enjoyed was the domains. And to be honest, specifically one domain, which I really thought was cool. There's a vast amount of domains in this book. But one of the domains that they listed is actually an additional domain. They didn't focus as much on it, was Sire 1313, which is the Morning Rail. And it's actually drawn from Everon, Rising from the Last War. It's a lightning rail train, but it's haunted. Basically, when the morning happened in Eberron. If you're familiar with that book, it was a major event. When it happened, there was people on this train that were stuck and they all died, and now the train is haunted. And it has the kind of the dark lord of that domain is the last passenger, which is like a rich passenger who the train was waiting on. And that's why they ended up not making it out in time and dying. And so I think you could make some really cool sessions around that train. I mean, I don't think it's a domain that's big enough to make, an entire campaign off of one train, but you could make one or two sessions, traveling from one place to another, or from one domain to another domain, or one part of a land within your haunted or horror campaign. You could utilize that type of idea from the morning rail. And I thought just it's a really cool idea that I don't think that you see too often in Dungeons and Dragons. Um, really like that. The third piece that I enjoyed a lot from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is the monsters section. I think they did a great job of bringing in monsters that are traditionally thought to be horror, as well as Dungeons and Dragons monsters. I thought they did a really great job of that. Specifically, my shout out I think I have to give is to the Dalahan, which really is the Headless Horseman. And they put that in there, and I think that's a great addition. And I think it's something I'm definitely planning on using in my campaign coming up. But it's a callback to, a lot of the traditional horror, and especially, Sleepy Hollow. And I think that's just a great piece to add to Dungeons and Dragons as well. There's so much you can do with horror, and Van Richten's does a good job of describing horror settings, of describing the differences between types of horror and genres, subgenres within horror. I think that it really helps a DM, or even a player who's thinking about playing in a session like this, to understand what to expect. They also do a good job of giving a disclaimer, talking about the importance of a DM to talk with their players about, safety, about making sure that everyone's comfortable, because you don't want to choose some stuff that's really going to freak people out. But then again, the way I look at it is usually if somebody wants to play in a horror campaign, they're expecting it to be dark. They're expecting it to hopefully be scary, and to have some grossness and some things that are really going to kind of give them a little bit of anxiety, because that's the whole point of horror, right? People that like horror movies, that like horror campaigns, horror genres, in books, they like that, right? They like the suspense, the scare, the anxiety caused by that session. And so that's kind of really what we're shooting for in my upcoming campaign as well. But I've talked to my players, and they know kind of what to expect. And so I think that's going to be that's an important piece, and they do that well in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft as well. Now, the only downside really that I felt was in the book. I thought the book was laid out pretty well. I gave you my top 3 things I liked. There were other things I liked in this guide as well. There's a new warlock piece, which I thought was really neat as a subclass of the warlock. And like I said, I picked out one monster as the Dalhan, but there's a lot of monsters I really liked, that I think add to this as well, that I plan on using myself. But if I had to choose something that I thought could be done better, or that might pull a little bit away from this, I think it is the domains. I know that the writers and the creators of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft really wanted to provide as much information and ideas as possible for running a horror campaign. But they just provide so many domains of dread that it gets to the point where it actually takes away from it, right? When I started looking through them, I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea, that's a cool idea, that's a cool idea. But then the more and more domains they added, I just kind of got sick. I got kind of tired of reading through them, and I just started skimming. I was like, okay, that's nice, that's nice. Out of a good sized book, 120 pages are just dedicated to domains of dread. Basically areas or types of campaign settings that you can add within your horror campaign. And again, it's nice. I guess I feel kind of bad, because I know as DMs we're always complaining that we don't have enough DM tools, and it'd be great to have more. And I know that a lot of this domains of dread was kind of for that. I mean, it's for the DMs who are looking and trying to create their own domains, or even grab one to play from the book. I just thought 120 pages of domains, it's like half the book. like that's a huge chunk of the book that I just felt was unnecessary. Especially too when at the end they add some, basically say in some other domains, and then they give really small, brief ideas. And one of them was, like I said, the Morning Rail, Sire 1313, which I thought was the best domain idea out of the entire book. I would have liked you. I would have liked to have seen that given 2 or 3 pages of ideas and background to it, instead of just a really brief mention in, kind of as a is a last ditch effort of, here's some extra ideas too that we thought about. Um, you know, I guess I don't know what the way to solve that would be. It's just something that really jumped out when I was going through the book. I don't want to sound like I don't like the book, because I think it's probably one of the better books that Dungeons and Dragons has come out with for fifth edition, especially lately. Um, I wasn't a huge fan of Candlekeep Mysteries. Um, I did love Eberron Rising from the Last War. I utilized it a lot. I got to be honest, Tasha's Cauldron, when I first heard it was coming out, and then even when I first got it, I wasn't sure. Now I find myself using Tasha's Cauldron of Everything a lot more than I ever expected, and it actually plays a big role in my upcoming campaign too. Probably Tasha's, Van Richten's, and your obviously your base player's handbook, Dungeons Master's Guide, things like that. But lately there's been some really good books. So I'm looking forward to what the next book that Dungeons and Dragons has to offer. But Van Richten's, I think we're going to play for the entire summer, a horror campaign. And so this is going to be kind of like, my Dungeons and Dragons Bible as I'm going through the horror campaign. And I'm sure the domains will be helpful. It's just, again, like I said, 120 pages of domains just seemed a little excessive. And I feel like maybe that could have been used for other things. Um, but we'll see. You only got 2 different subclasses, so maybe there could have been some more of those, or some new races instead of lineages. I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you think. Comment below this video. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. I put up a few videos, but it's been a little bit because I was trying to decide the direction that was going to go with this. But now I think we're going to devote some of this channel to session play. So that's the plan. Next week, like I said, I'm going to publish the session zeros with each of my characters. And then the following week after that, we're going to start uploading the actual campaign play. So you're going to get to see each of the sessions that we play in this horror campaign. And hopefully you guys will like it. So again, comment below what your favorite part of Van Richten's was, or if you haven't gotten to see it, what you thought of what I had to say. And I look forward to it. I try to reply to anybody that comments. So please comment below, like, subscribe, and until next time, keep playing.